Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Well, today I'm going to be talking about citizens who are braver than their leaders. I mean, that's my opinion, and you're entitled to have yours. You see, I think people would peg me as a very strongly opinionated person, but I'm also a tolerant person because I grew up in a generation where freedom of speech was a value, not a threat. And we could listen, we could debate issues, and we had fun doing it, by the way. And there wasn't any of this hatred and threats of, I'm offended by someone else having a different opinion. So if you have a different opinion than I do, as you hear me speak today on the show, because it's just going to be me and you today, no guests, just you and I, feel free to call in and debate a point with me if you don't agree. And if you do agree with what I'm saying, please expand on it, because I know that you have what to offer. Everyone has what to offer in this world. As my wise mother always said, and I say this so many times during my shows, if we all thought alike, we would only need one person in the room, in the world. So let's discuss, let's debate, let's learn, let's listen to the other side. You can choose to agree afterwards or disagree, but we can still have good feelings towards each other. In fact, I just had this with somebody yesterday where we vehemently, well, maybe not vehemently, but we disagreed on a point, and we're still friends. Hey. What a chidush, what a new thing that is. All right. Our numbers are on the top of our homepage on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. For North America and Israeli listeners, they can call in for pretty much free, depending on where you are. And again, the top of our homepage at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com are our numbers. Feel free to call into the show today, especially because I don't have any guests. It's just you and I. And join us in the chat room. Just go to the red button that says Listen Now on the top of our homepage at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. That's our player. It'll take you right into the chat room. And all you need to do is sign in with your Twitter or your Facebook or whatever. We'll be right back.
The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel was prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago and is coming true today. Shalom. Join me, Josh Wander, on Israel Unplugged. Listen in as we delve into the spiritual and physical aspects of the Jewish return to Zion. We'll discuss the biblically mandated, historic, and of course practical understandings of this incredible transition from exile to redemption. That's Israel Unplugged, every Monday on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
All right, we are back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. And I want to, I feel like the last couple of shows I did where I talked about the situation here about getting a new government and what's happening with the ceasefire with Hamas and the reasons behind all of these political maneuverings and what we're seeing, I feel like I haven't really had enough time to go into the details to really let you comfortably understand what is really going on. And so I want to take this time on this show to do that. So a lot is happening here in Israel. A lot of Israelis are getting very excited, and some are very angry, in fact, that a new government is going to possibly be sworn in this week or maybe even next week. what is happening here is that Israel has a parliament, and we don't have candidates that run for the presidency or the prime minister. You vote for a political party, and the head of that party, when they are able to make a coalition of at least 61 seats out of 120, they've now got a majority of the government, and they can rule. And they will go to the president of Israel, who's more like an ornament. And he's supposed to be representing the people of Israel, the president, and they will say, "Please give us the mandate. We think that we can make a government." The president will do so if it's in his mind to do so, or her mind to do so. In this case, it's his, and they will have that time to go make and sign the signatures that they need of at least 61 Knesset members, in order to be able to say that we now can form a government. Now, it's never happened that one political party has gotten 61 seats or more here in Israel. So what happens is that if a party gets 45 seats, 50 seats, 30 seats, whatever it is, they will need to make deals with other parties who are along, parallel more or less in their political leanings, to come together and form a team. And they'll say, let's say they'll go to the religious parties and say, "Look, why don't you join our government? We'll give you money in order to be able to improve your schools for your kids, and we'll give you this." And then that religious party might say, "Okay, that sounds good, but we also want to have, let's say, we want to have the Ministry of Education. We want to be in charge of the Ministry of Education. We also want, let's say, the tourism ministry." That probably wouldn't interest so much the religious parties, but they'll make their demands, and then there's all the wheeling and dealing, because it might be that another party that they need to join this coalition also wants to have the education portfolio, right? They may want to have the Ministry of Education. I'll just say that the coveted ministries are the Defense Ministry, the Foreign Ministry, because those are the two biggest profiles. And they will go, and then I should say that the biggest, of course, we know is the prime minister. So this is what's going on. And so there's all this wheeling and dealing. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu was trying to, being the largest party in the Knesset, they got 30-some votes, and everybody else got much less. He was trying to get people on the right wing in order to join his coalition. There's also breakaway parties like the New Hope Party under Gidon Sa'ar. These were all former Likudniks, okay, or we say Likud party members, who decided that they've had enough of Bibi. They're tired of him as well. They want new leadership, and they form their own party. They feel that that's the best way in order to get Bibi out, because Bibi is a very powerful figure. Number one, he's been the prime minister for over 10 years straight, I believe, and even longer than that, if you want to add when he was prime minister many years ago. And they and people love Bibi. The people who love Bibi love Bibi. He's king. The people who hate Bibi hate Bibi, and they are even now putting out videos of him being like Hitler, which is disgusting, by the way, and the devil, putting horns on him. So you've got his lovers and you've got his haters. And a lot of people who are maybe in the middle saying that, well, we don't hate Bibi, but, it's time for a change. It's enough. 10 years is a long time. Now, the people who support Bibi are saying, well, Bibi is the only leader. He's like king. He's amazing. He brought us the Abraham Accords, which was peace treaties or at least cooperation with much of the Arab world. Israelis, I think like 85,000 Israelis went to Dubai last month or the month before. I mean, it's like crazy. The Israelis are hungry, especially after Corona, to get out. We love to travel. We love to see the world. We love to meet people. It's an Israeli trait. You know, Israelis are everywhere. I was in South Africa once, not just South Africa, but Swaziland. And I heard Hebrew being spoken. I said, oh, there's Israelis here. That's amazing. Tourists. In any case, this is what's happening here in Israel. Now, apparently, Bibi was just about to be able to get the signatures to sign, to get everyone to sign, and he would have a majority government. That means 61 seats or more. And then he can go to the president and say, I've got the signatures. And then you would have a vote in the Knesset and a swearing in. And that would seal the deal. And boom, you've got your new government. So what happened at the last minute was that Bennett, Naftali Bennett, who is the head of the Yamina party, and I want to remind everybody that Yamina in English or in Hebrew, translated into English, means right, R-I-G-H-T. It means the right. And he was making very tough demands, as he should, as every party leader should. They want to, well, they're supposed to want to serve their constituents, serve their voters. And he made tough deals. He wanted this, he wanted that, blah, 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 blah. And Bibi gave in. He was also going to rotate as being prime minister, I believe. That means that instead of each government lasts around 4 years here, except it hardly ever does. Usually we go to new elections after 3 years and something, sometimes 2 years and something. And in these last 2 years, every 6 months, it's crazy that the Israelis are going crazy about all these elections. So I hope I'm explaining this right, and please feel free to call in if you don't understand something. Don't write me, because I'm not going to explain this on emails. But if you want, call in. And that's why I tell people, listen live. You can call in. This is Israel Talk Radio, Israel News Talk Radio. So in any case, Bibi almost had his coalition. And at the last minute, Bennett made a deal with the left, meaning Yair Lapid, meaning the who else is in this coalition? The Labor Party, which is very, very left, and it's led by an extremely progressive leftist, Merav Michaeli. Is that her first name, Merav? And she's a person who doesn't even, well, she said it. She doesn't think that marriage is important. In many cases, she says parents shouldn't even raise their own children. The government would be better doing it. We're talking about real communist type progressive, which is regressive in my opinion, ideas. Not at all family oriented, not at all wholesome oriented, in my opinion. And then you've got even more left of her, Meretz, which is in this coalition, which they're not even, in my opinion, Zionistic. They're extremely left and pulling Israel left. They represent a lot of the LGBTQ, whatever the initials are right now. Those I don't even know what it is anymore. They've got all these different names, and I'm not familiar with it, and I'm not really interested. But I wish them peace in their lives. But what can I tell you? And then you've got the Arabs who are agreeing. Now that means if they needed the Arabs to join as well. And when you have the Arabs joining, it's a dangerous thing, because the Arabs are totally anti-Zionist. They don't believe in the state of Israel. They don't believe that this land belongs to the Jewish people. They're for the terrorists. They support the Arabs in Gaza. They support anything pretty much that's against Israel. They don't even want Israel to defend itself when we're being bombed by Gaza. So you've got a situation that if whoever is going to be in power and has the Arabs in that coalition, if they do anything that's going to tick off the Arabs and the Arabs leave, they say, oh, you know what? We're not going to be in this coalition anymore because we don't like what you're doing, right? Let's say like defending yourself against rockets. their whole government will fall. They won't have their 61-seat majority. So that means that if Naftali Bennett becomes the first prime minister in this agreement, because he's going to rotate it with Yair Lapid, he, I think, would probably be doing everything he can in order to keep this coalition together. And that means appeasing, even though he may not personally want to do it. He might rationalize to himself, well, listen, I really think I can lead Israel better, and I have to lean over this way towards the Arabs and their demands, but it's better that I stay in power. And so I'll just have to do it. You know, what do they say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. All right, my music is on. That means I have to go. But we're going to be back after a 2-minute break, so don't go anywhere. I have a lot more to say and a lot more to share with you.
Hi, everyone. This is Andrea Siminto from Jerusalem, inviting you to drop everything and join me on my show, Pull Up a Chair. We'll visit this week's quirky stories, meet fabulous guests, and discover my Israel. Together, we'll laugh, shout, and explain the topics that make us say, hey, we've got to talk about that. So get comfortable and pull up a chair with me, Andrea Siminto, every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
All right, we're back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Let me adjust my microphone here because I'm not comfortable. And when a person speaking in a microphone is not comfortable, it means that they're slowly going to lean back in their chair and going away from the mic like this because they want to get comfortable and they don't realize that they're not near the mic. Okay, here we go. I'm giving you some of the secrets of radio land here. All right, so I explained to you how a government needs to be formed here in Israel and what happens, the wheeling and dealing, and the fragility of these these coalitions, because you have to make sure that everybody on your team, so to speak, in this new coalition is happy enough, because no one's ever happy, but they're happy enough that they're going to stay in the coalition and not break up the government and have to go to new elections like we've seen every 6 months, because these are not natural allies. Naftali Bennett, his whole party, as I said, means Yamina. It's right wing, supposed to be right wing. And yet he went and made a left wing government. He gave life to a left wing government. And a lot of his supporters, a lot of the people who voted for him feel betrayed. He said he would not make a government with Yair Lapid, that he would not go with the left. And that's exactly what happened. Now, I will be my own devil's advocate and say, well, he's probably rationalizing, look, enough of Bibi, and we need new blood in the Knesset running the government, and we have ideas, and I'm going to go with Yedidi, my friend, Yair Lapid, and we're going to change things. And in fact, their coalition bloc, they're calling it Shinui. If you hear that word Shinui, it means change in Hebrew. Okay? So that's the name of their bloc, Shinui, or the change bloc, because they want to oust Netanyahu. And that's basically the glue that this coalition has. It's an anti-Bibi, anyone but Bibi glue. And as soon as Bibi's out, what are they going to have in common? The only thing, in my opinion, that they're going to have in common, they will have one more thing in common, and that is their quest for power. And therefore, that thin glue will encourage them to keep the coalition together, because they now have, certain parties have the ministries that they may have wanted, and someone's going to be prime minister that's always wanted to be prime minister, Yair Lapid, and Bennett's going to be getting his prime ministership if this swearing-in takes place. And this will keep them together. But it also means that, again, as I said, and I don't see it any other way. You feel free to call in and disagree with me if you see it differently. But I would see that the quote-unquote Yamina leader, Naftali Bennett, would have to lean, as we say in Hebrew, likrat, towards the Arab demands, because he wants to keep the coalition together. Because here's a perfect example of what we're seeing today. Right now, the Hamas is threatening to break the ceasefire and open up fire on Israeli citizens by sending rockets or terror or whatever it is on our people if we have a flag parade in Jerusalem. And especially if it's where we always have our flag parade. It goes to the old city of Jerusalem. It goes to the Western Wall, the Kotel. And we go through Damascus Gate. And they're screaming and threatening that if you dare do such a thing, we will break this. They're threatening to break the ceasefire and go to war. So this could spark a war. Now, I would think if we saw real leadership and real concern for freedom and for Israeli rights and just for patriotism, that the leadership on the left, Naftali Bennett, Benny Gantz, Yair Lapid, and the others would get up and say, whoa, we are Israeli citizens and we can wave our flag wherever we want to. And no one is going to tell us not to do so. I would like to see Yair Lapid get up and say that. I would like to see even Naftali Bennett, who I would expect it from, to do that. But all I see is quiet. They're not saying a thing because I believe that they don't want anything to ruin their chances of being sworn into the Knesset and taking power. And this to me is weakness. And that the Israeli people are saying, whoa, we can't dance with our flag and have a parade that we do every single year for the past 30 years or more. We can't do this in our own country, in our own capital? What is going on with you? Are you nuts? Are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where is our leadership? And I see citizens being braver because we know the risks. We hear the news. We know that there's threats against us. But are we going to let Hamas run our country? A bunch of ragtag terrorists? Or are we a democracy? We're supposed to be a democracy. A law and order society going to be taking orders from terrorists who don't rule legitimately, where there are elections, who are outlaws, who even the United States of America and other countries term as terrorists. They are recognized as terrorists. And we're going to let them run our country and tell us what we can do in our own country? It's ludicrous. So all of these people who are thrilled and are putting out their chests that the left has won, and they're going to make they've made a coalition and they're going to go into the Knesset. Yes, it may happen. But don't be too sure. A lot can happen until the swearing in. Now, the swearing in, I'm talking here as of Monday morning here in Israel. The latest reports are that a vote will take place in the Knesset to swear in this new left-wing government on either Wednesday of this week or Monday of next week. All right? Let me just give you the dates. And if you're listening to the show not live on the replay, the news might be a little bit old, but they're talking about either the 9th of June or the 14th of June, which will most likely be the day that they are scheduled to have a swear-in. So until they are sworn in the Knesset, they are not going to be Naftali Bennett will not be the next prime minister of Israel, and this government will not take power, or this coalition will not take power. In the meantime, the prime minister of Israel is still Benjamin Netanyahu, and he is doing everything he can to throw a wrench in the wheels of the left. And many things can stop this from taking place. Now, two things come to mind immediately that could topple this house of cards whose glue that's keeping it together, as I said, was anyone but Bibi, oust Bibi, and their quest for power. Okay? And that is having this flag parade taking place in Jerusalem and going into the old city there, or through Damascus Gate, etc. And another issue, Qatar, or I think the Americans pronounce the country Qatar. That's an Arab country in one of the Gulf states, and they are every month giving millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to the Hamas in Gaza. And Israel, after this last war and after an outcry of the people of Israel, the citizenry of Israel, and especially the parents of our missing soldiers, the bodies that Hamas cruelly has held on to and not let the parents have a decent burial for their children, they're demanding the return of the bodies. And they said, how can you make a ceasefire with this terrorist entity and in return not at least get our bodies, our sons' bodies back so we can bury them and we can have a place to go visit them? And this has been for years already. They've been held. Their remains have been held by the cruel terrorists in Gaza and have not even let the parents bury their children. So now the Israeli government is starting to take more action, and they're saying that since they already signed a ceasefire without that demand, they're now saying that Qatar funds to Gaza will be stalled, and we're not going to turn over this money until the remains of our soldiers, Hadar Golden and Aron Shaul, God bless their souls, are turned over back to Israel so their parents can have a proper burial for their children. Now, this is not a political issue, friends. This is a human decency issue. It's a human rights issue. What do they need the remains of our children, our two children, there for? And let's not forget the other two Israeli citizens that they're holding that are believed to still be alive. An Ethiopian citizen from Ashkelon, from Israel, who lived in Ashkelon, who apparently had some mental problems, issues, and he walked over the border because it's only 6 kilometers away, I believe, 6 or 12 kilometers away from Gaza. And he walked over in there, and they took him, and he was never returned. And another Arab citizen of Israel, who they say was a spy. That's what they said. You're a spy, and they're holding him. What's with him? We'll be right back.
Are you interested in transforming your life, drawing closer to the Creator, and uncovering the deeper meanings and hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
And me, William Hall,
on the Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
Hello, I am Walter Bingham. If you want to hear the news behind the news and the true perspective on world affairs, then the Walter Bingham File is the program for you. We bring you interviews with the movers and shakers, political commentaries, and on-the-spot reports of events as they happen. All here every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Israel time, 9 a.m. Eastern time. And it's all archived on our website. Make it a date.
All right, we are back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. And we're still trying to see whether we're going to have a new government or not. A lot can happen until they're supposedly sworn in on either Wednesday or Monday. That looks like those are going to be possibly the days. People here on the right wing are saying that it's they're using strong words like treachery even. Some of the headlines we've seen, one of the biggest election thefts we've seen as the Yamina forms a coalition with the left wing and Arab parties. And other people are saying for the first time there will be a post-Zionist government in Israel. A lot of anger here and a lot of happiness on the side of people who want Bibi out. All right, we do have a caller. Let's go to Antonio from is Washington D.C., I believe.
Yes.
Hi, Antonio. What's on your mind?
It pains me to see what's going on with Israel. I really feel that I really hope that that party do not come into existence. I hate to say that, but it has to be true because Israel is a Jewish state, and it needs to stand alone with being Jewish, Israel, period. Another thing, people should listen and learn. Look what's going on in Venezuela. The situation happened a few years ago with the two presidency, then the situation with America and so forth. Now you have it going on. I don't care if they don't like Bibi or not. That's not the issue. The issue should not be that. The issue should be what can they do for Israel, for Israelis, for the Jewish people, period. Not because of hatred. And don't fall into that hatred attitude to get someone out. He's not perfect. Bibi is not perfect. No one is perfect. But use sense. Use your mind. We all need to. It hurts me to hear what's going on, but I just can't support that party.
You mean this Shinui block, the change block? You don't support it, and you know what, Antonio, you're right. I think that people do want to see leadership, and they don't want to see a government based on hatred of someone, as you said. And in fact, the majority of the people did vote. I mean, Likud got 30 plus seats, I believe, and they are the largest ruling party in the Knesset. So I would say that the majority of the citizenry of Israel agree with you.
But you know, the one thing I realize, a group of people, not all Arabs, but majority, Hamas. Look how they voted, the Palestinians voted them in. Now they want to tell Israelis how to celebrate. No, you cannot appease that. You cannot, because once you appease that small, it's not small, but that particular situation, you're going to keep on appeasing, and it cannot be done. It should not be done. You cannot appease evil, period. That's my statement I want to say to you.
Well, you know what? I agree with you, Antonio, and thank you for your call. Very, very true. Appeasement will just weaken you. So thank you for your call. I agree with you. And in fact, especially with the Arab culture and society, they look at any weakness as an invitation to do more and more and more because they see it works. All right. Very good comment, and thank you for your call. So this is where Israel is right now. These are two things that could put a wrench in the wheel and stop this left-wing coalition from taking power. Is that either the Hamas opens up fire against Israel, either because we have our flag parade as we usually do, or if Israel postpones the transfer of money from Qatar to the terrorists in Gaza. The Gazans are saying they're saying that they can open fire against Israel again, and if that happens, the Arabs in this new coalition are not going to want to see Israel defend itself. Israel's going to have to defend itself, and if they do, they'll leave, and then Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett will not have their coalition. They won't have the 61 seats needed in order to rule. So this could stop them, and other things as well. It could be that people in their party, there's already a threat of one person in the Yamina party who says he's not going to vote for this new government. And so if other people bolt that are on this in these parties that have joined this left-wing coalition, if they bolt and say we're not going to vote for this, we're betraying our voters, if that's what they should say, it could happen that they also will not get the amount of votes that they need, which is at least 61 votes. Okay, we have a caller. Is it Sem from the occupied territories of Chicago? Hi there. What's your first name?
No, that's Zev, Z-E-V.
Oh, Zev. Okay, hi, Zev. What are you doing in the occupied...
Okay, so anyhow, this is what I just wanted to say. I know that the excuse that Naftali Bennett is saying that the reason why he's joining this government, he doesn't want to go to a fifth election. But one thing that could be done, and even though they did it one time, but it still could work, at least in this case, is have direct elections of the prime minister. At least the people will decide who the prime minister is, and not a bunch of greedy politicians. So that's one solution. Just have a prime ministerial election. And another thing is this now, we all remember Paul Eidelberg. I don't know if, I'm assuming that he's not well, but Paul Eidelberg actually wrote it out in a very good book called Jewish Statesmanship, Lest Israel Fall, where he essentially proposed like having a constitution based on Jewish law and on common law, and also to divide the country into districts. And he also showed that a lot of this stuff about people saying Israel is too small a country for districts, he actually blew that myth out of the water. Why? Because he's proved in his book that there are smaller countries than Israel, and they do have districts. So if you just go read Paul Eidelberg's book called Jewish Statesmanship, Lest Israel Fall, he actually had the right idea. And there's also even another group in Israel called the Kohelet Group, which is made up of Israeli political scientists and professors, and they even have proposals online of making Israel a more representative democracy. But there is a solution if you could just convince the political parties to go along with that solution.
Right. Zev, you bring up a good point. Number one, we did actually have direct elections for prime minister. I think twice they had it, and then they just did away with it.
Three times, 1996, 1991, 1999, and 2001.
Who can remember anymore? Okay, and they repealed that. And then also there has to be a change of government, because if we're going to go to 2 elections, 3 elections, 4 elections, and possibly now 5th elections, something has to change in the way that we're running our government. And you're absolutely right about that. I'm hoping that the next government in Israel is going to be the Mashiach, the Messiah, because we're in such muck today. We really need a Redeemer to come and redeem mankind, because we're in such muck today. But let me tell you that we don't have to go to 5th elections. Bibi was just about to make a coalition with Bennett until he bolted. So that's really not an excuse that he's giving that we would go to 5th elections. But I think Bibi wouldn't mind.
He was a smart guy, and all of a sudden he turns the tables. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, that's being a masterful politician, but not necessarily good for the citizens. Maybe for their own political careers, but not for the citizens. Well, it's been really refreshing to talk with you, Zev. I think this is the first time you've called in to the show, so it's nice to have you.
Oh, yeah, okay. It's great talking to you also.
All right. And you got to leave the occupied territories of Chicago and make Aliyah, especially with a name like Zev.
Baruch Hashem, I actually got one of my sisters got 3 new triplet sons as grandkids, so I'm going to have to go there to visit my great nephews.
Great,
and nieces too.
So when you're here, buy yourself an apartment and then come to Israel.
Well, I hope I could afford it, because I know my
No, you can't say that. You can't say that, Zev. If the Ethiopian Jews who came with nothing and the Yemenite Jews who came with nothing made it here, you will make it here. I promise you. You just have to lower your standards.
Well, I hope I could.
You will. All right.
Okay.
Feel free to email me anytime. I'll try to give you more pointers if I can. Thanks for your call, Zev.
Okay. Okay, Hatzlacha. Very good talking to you.
Thank you very much. Same here, and call in again. All right, so you know what? I have so much information to give you, and I see it's the end of the show. I've only have another 2 minutes, literally, left, and so maybe I'll I'll just continue this topic also tomorrow. But Israel is on a point now where we can go right or we can go left or go to new elections, although Bibi is still trying to make a coalition. He's still trying to woo people back. I understand he tried to talk with Gidon Sar from the New Hope Party, Tikva Chadasha. Is that what they're called? And to try to get him back on Bibi's side. And there's all this maneuvering. Don't think that Bibi's, given up and picked up his hands and is packing up and getting ready to move and leave his prime minister's residence. He's not yet, because a lot can happen until Wednesday or Monday, whenever they're going to have this swearing, the vote and the swearing in. In the meantime, again, Hamas is threatening to break the ceasefire with Israel if we have the flag parade or if Israel withholds the money that Qatar is sending the Hamas. And if that should happen, again, the Arab party, Ra'am, could bolt from this new left-wing coalition, this Shinui bloc. They could bolt for that reason. They say, what, you're bombing Gaza? We will not have anything to do with you bombing our brothers in Gaza. And they could leave. And there's a lot. Okay, I'm just looking through my notes here. There's so much more I want to share with you. I'll do it bli neder, as we say. Not promising, but I will try to cover this tomorrow as well on my show. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. You've been listening to the Tamar Yonah Show here at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Feel free to email me, not with questions, but with comments is fine. Tamar at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
If you're hearing this message, everyone else can too. Advertise with Israel News Talk Radio and get your message out to people. We'll build a personalized package for you. Contact advertising at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey, this is Jake in Anchorage, Alaska, and I love listening to all the super interesting interviews and up-to-date information on what's happening in Israel.
Hello, this is Anna King, originally from London, now living in Israel. And what can I say? Israel News Talk Radio is my cup of tea.
My name is Bhaskar. I'm from India, and I love listening because you get to know the truth and wonderful voices from this lovely country.
Mom! Okay, wait a minute. Hi, this is Chava Dax, and I'm calling from the rolling hills of Ma'ale Adumim, just north of Jerusalem. I always listen to Israel News Talk Radio to get all the latest news and commentary and to keep me up to date every day.
This is Sarah Dax from Ma'ale Adumim, and I'm 12. I wish Israel News Talk Radio was boring so my mom wouldn't listen to it all the time. Mom!
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.